Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SASH Coordinator webinar for December of 2018. Today on our agenda, first we're going to go through some SASH updates. Then we're going to have a presentation from Anita Hoy and Mike McCusker from COVE. And then we'll have an open forum where we'll have time to ask some questions and of the SASH administrative team. So now I'm pleased to present our two presenters. So first, Mike. Mike has a strong interest in the security and rights of people and organizations that provide advocacy. As the outreach and volunteer coordinator, he enjoys meeting senior citizens throughout Vermont and the staff of organizations who support them. Mike furthers his passion for human connection as a co-host for Cuppa, a weekly radio show on WGDR Plainfield. Mike also enjoys people, dogs, and gardening, with a passion for the design and installation of sanctuary garden spaces. He's been the principal and owner of a small landscape design company called A Guy and His Dog Landscaping for more than 20 years. And having a connection with nature, Mike also enjoys cataloging wildflowers when hiking the deep woods of Vermont. He's originally from Ohio and a graduate of Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Mike has a long history as a social worker, protecting and working with underserved and neglected population. And he joined the U.S. Peace Corps and lived in a small village in the Central African Republic for 2 years, serving as a health teacher and village pharmacy educator. Anita Hoy has been with COVE since 2002 after completed a master's program at Vermont College of Norwich University. She started as the administrative director and then moved into the position of Vermont Senior Medicare Patrol SMP project director. Under her leadership, Vermont SMP has received national recognition for the COVE Savvy Seniors Theatrical Education Program, through which scams are acted out in comical vignettes, then grounded in a narrated explanation about the scam, what to do if victimized, and whom to call. The program received additional funding to film one of the 45-minute presentations, developed a rehearsal DVD, and formed a training binder, which was made available to local programs across the country. Additionally, Vermont SMP received national recognition for outstanding product development when it released the first edition of its Pull Together newsletter, which is a quarterly publication designed to inform readers of Vermont SMP activities, volunteer opportunities, and programs available. Anita enjoys health, fitness, and well-being activities. Having received numerous fitness and massage certifications and trainings, she also maintains a busy massage and personal training business. While they're both speaking, if you have any questions, type them in the chat and we'll try to ask them either throughout the presentation if it makes sense or at the end if we're going to hold on to that. So I'm going to be doing the slides as we go. So I'm going to turn it now over to you, Mike and Anita. I will start on the next slide and then just let me know when you want me to go into each new slide.
Wow, okay. Did you know that we did all that?
No, and I feel like I should do some push-ups.
I know, I'm really grateful I never wrote that. It's really good stuff.
Well, good morning. I'm Anita Hoy, and
I'm Mike McLeese.
Yes, and we're not on radio. And I'm really excited today to introduce the Senior Medicare Patrol Program, but also to talk a little bit about fraud, error, and abuse. And I want to mention, too, that we're a statewide program, and we do have other staff persons. We have Kelly McElhaney, who runs the southeastern or the southern portion of the state, and then Wendy Galander, who also runs the northeastern section of the state. So we're kind of spread out. We have a few able bodies that do a lot of work for us. Did you want to add to that, Mike?
Well, I'm here in the northwest, which includes Burlington, and I really hope that out there that there are some of you that I know. I want to say, first of all, I'm very pleased to be here this morning, and I'm so appreciative. All of us are very appreciative of SASH. We could not do our work without you. We really mean that, and we're looking forward to collaborating more and doing really good things. Do you want me to start?
Next slide.
Well, so first I want to say that I'm going to ask you to look at this presentation today in two ways. One is the way in which you work with your clients or the residents. I don't know how you refer to them. But also, though, for yourselves, I think we often forget that because many of you are decades away from being a part of Social Security, and some of us not very many years away, which would include me. Shocking. But so please think about that, because this is not something that is just for a population that we work with. It's really for all of us, because the Medicare system is the largest healthcare program in the United States. So a little bit of history, and we'll go through this quickly so you don't want to poke your eye out. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson, as you can see, signed the Medicare bill into law. That really made a huge difference, and people of all political perspectives are very, very happy to have this program today. There were some issues and bumps along the way, mainly with fraud and abuse and errors, which we started noticing right away. So in 1997, the Administration on Aging launched a pilot program. There are only 12 in the country. And needless to say that from 1997 forward, then the program began to grow, and with programming to where it is today. And I think, Anita, it was like 2007 when it became what it is now.
Yes.
Yeah. And so next slide, please.
Oh, we have a poll.
What? Go ahead.
We need that poll question, Amy.
Oh.
Yes, there you go.
Well, I can't forget about the poll.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Not poll dancing. Poll.
Yes, if you don't mind answering, have you hosted a senior Medicare patrol or an SMP presentation in the past year? I know a lot of you have.
Okay. In the room here, yeah, I see some folks that I know.
Nodding head.
Yes.
And so,
You get a
Mike and Edie,
prize
so
if
you
you
know, we have some of our folks are in rooms with a group of people, so there may just be one person responding. But right now we have about 52% of people voting, so we'll give you another couple of seconds to vote.
Okay.
Great. We give out prizes for people that answer correctly.
Okay.
In Mike's pocket.
I'm going to close the poll and I'm going to share the results.
Awesome.
Great. Well, you know what? That's great. Look at how much work I have to do.
I know.
I have a lot of work. I like that because I don't want to be unemployed.
Well, and our whole goal is to work with you.
Yeah.
So we want to meet everyone, and we want to talk to residents and staff of these sites. So this is awesome.
That's good news. Next poll. So where the program today, there is an SMP, which stands for Senior Medicare Patrol, in all 50 states and 4 U.S. protectorates. I usually give extra credit for naming them. I can hardly ever remember them. It's Guam, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia. It's important work that we're doing, and we're in every state. And like the SHIP program, I think there's a SHIP program in all states. Yeah, that's where we are now. Next slide, please. Do you want to take this one?
So the SMPs, the way it's structured, it's funded by the Administration for Community Living, and each local SMP is housed in a variety of different structures. So it could be a nonprofit, it could be an AARP, it might be through a SHIP program or a Council on Aging, but they're housed in many different ways. And COVE is our sponsor. So COVE is the Community of Vermont Elders. And they've been our sponsor since 2002, and we've been very grateful to have this program under their leadership for this time.
You know, I would add here that this is how collaboration works, even in our own organization, and then how we further extend that out to SASH, and then there are others with SHIP and others. But that whole thing, all these pieces, should come together in one pie for us to serve the folks, older Vermonters, and to help ourselves along the way, to be honest.
Right. Next
slide, please. So, what is the Senior Medicare Patrol? Obviously, it's helping Medicare beneficiaries. This is our big thing in the SMP program, to prevent, detect, and report. I'd say PDR, so I can get it all correctly. PDR, protect, detect, and report healthcare fraud. That's our number one thing. Then we help preserve the integrity of the Medicare program. We do that by helping older Vermonters. You can have a big part in this by assisting also. In a minute, we're going to talk about the loss in the system. I think you might be a bit surprised. Can you speak a little bit about the volunteers, about the other mission that we have?
The volunteers in the program have been very important to us. We've had up to 85, and I think right now we're standing at around 40 volunteers around the state. That would include our Savvy Senior volunteers who do the theater programs for us. We have folks that come to our office to do work for us in the office. We've had volunteers who have very graciously contributed to our website and some of the written materials that we have. So volunteerism is very important, and across the nation, I think there's around 6,000 volunteers that do work for each local SMP. So it's an incredibly important and valuable contribution to the program, along with partnerships such as SASH.
Yeah, and I'll add that it's very important to us at COVE to increase that volunteers, and we are having staff retreats. And our next one, we're going to address this issue, and there may be a point where we might ask you, can we come and do just a presentation on volunteers? Next slide, please. So the mission, I guess I could do the next slide. The mission of our SMP, of course, to empower and assist Medicare beneficiaries, their families, and caregivers. But really, that means you know, as a caregiver. And here we have the PDR again: prevent, detect, and report healthcare fraud, errors, and abuse. And can you talk a little bit about the outreach, since you created a lot of these programs here in Vermont? So
at a national level, protect, detect, and report is the mission of SMP, and we prevent through the education and outreach. We detect issues through reading summary notices, training people how to read them, from calling us when there's an issue with a salesperson or any other kind of thing that comes up. And our outreach and education is a huge part of what we do around the state. So that's why we go to SASH sites and talk to residents, and along with things like libraries and other places that we go to the state, we do programs up to 150 a year throughout Vermont.
And today is an outreach. It's an example of the outreach. Next slide, please. So this one, there's been a lot of hullabaloo in the last year, because you all may know that the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, finally did a good thing by changing out the Medicare cards. If you don't know at this point, every Medicare beneficiary in the United States has received a new card. It is no longer the Social Security. And if we had time, we would do a poll and ask you why that is. They changed it, so we'll just tell you it's because it made identity theft pretty easy. And identity theft is a bad thing to give someone a criminal entree to your mortgages and to your IRA accounts and all that. Obviously, it's a very bad thing. It takes years, if not long, you know, to resolve that. So in the last year, that's been happening. Vermont, we should be all transitioned. I do want to say, however, that occasionally I'm still running into folks who did not get the new Medicare card. And what you can do to help alleviate stress, because it's stressful to think you might lose your health care. Well, they're not. You know, if that happens, tell people that they can try to remain calm, that it's very easy to fix. I've seen it happen twice here already in Vermont. People just need to call Medicare. You know, it's 1-800-MEDICARE. And report that. And then within 4 to 6 weeks, that individual will get their new Medicare card. That number, by the way, is computer generated, so it has absolutely zero connection to the person's identity. That's the very good thing about it. And the last thing that I will say, to assure people who might not have their card, CMS wanted people to feel very comfortable. So the old card will work all the way through 2019. So there's still plenty of time if somebody missed it. And I think we have a poll now, don't we?
We do have a poll, but I also want to mention that you can always call me at the COVE office and or Council on Aging for assistance if there's an issue with the new Medicare card. So certainly we're always willing to assist.
Can you give the number? Because we really should have had the number in here a couple more times. I think Amy asked me. I
so the COVE number is 802-229-4731. And again, my name's Anita, so I'm the person that you would talk to about that.
Okay, so, which poll did you want me to launch? Is it the one that starts with if you are familiar?
Before we get started?
Okay.
Yeah, and let me tell you why this is on here. When I give the presentation, this is usually on fraud, on SMP fraud. This is one of the first things I ask is, can people have a clue? They don't even, you guys have hints already up here, but if people have any idea how much we lose annually in the United States due to fraud, abuse, and errors.
And this is reported fraud.
Only report. It could be much higher than any of the figures you choose. Yeah, so.
Take the billion.
What are you taking?
The middle one.
The middle one. Anybody else here in the room want to chime in on that?
Trillion.
You say trillion?
Okay. Go home.
You're going big.
Yeah.
It's going big.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got 65% voted. I'll close the poll now and share what the results are.
All right.
Well, all right, we got a bunch of smart cookies in this room. It is, but you know what happens? I mean, typically when I ask this question, I don't give any, parameters, or they can't choose. And often people will talk about millions. And it is staggering, 90 to 150 billion. And I've been doing this job for a year and a half, and even today, every time I see that, it's just shocking. Because we have, not to be political, but in Washington, from time to time, there are groups that want to cut into Medicare. So can you imagine what would happen if we can cut just half of this waste, fraud, error, and abuse? What that would do for the solvency of the program. So it's a big deal. What we have to present and how we can work with folks, we can really be an active part in greatly reducing that number. Next slide, please. Me or you?
Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. Certainly, just kind of going back to what Mike was just saying, if we can cut fraud in half, we save not only the Medicare system itself, but also money for beneficiaries and their families, because we won't have to cut into services that are offered through Medicare, and it will save them money. So Medicare beneficiaries, as a result of fraud, have higher premiums, higher co-payments, and have less available treatment options.
And I want to go back to that idea about how that you can engage with this presentation today in a personal level. You all have, many of us still have parents or aunties and uncles and neighbors and people we care about. The things that we're doing today will help to keep Medicare solvent for those of you who are going to be coming on in the future. It's really a big deal. Mm-hmm. Next slide, please. Anita, what is fraud?
I know.
I still can't figure it out.
Well, it's tough. It's tough. But fraud is really being intentionally deceived. So somebody who actually goes out and intends to take something from someone else, whether it's Medicare or anything else. Basically, it's thievery, and we're just trying to benefit ourselves through fraud.
Next slide, please.
Do you want me to get abused?
Yes, I do, but then I might say something.
Okay.
I'm very chatty.
I know. So Medicare abuse is kind of that middle ground. So you have errors, you have fraud, kind of on high and low spectrum, but abuse is kind of like when a provider might be irresponsible or neglectful. So say a situation comes up, we've noticed a Medicare issue on a bill, and we bring it to the provider's attention. And, we expect that will be, the problem will be solved, they'll make their corrections, and we'll move on. If that provider continues to have these issues, and for all intents and purposes, it looks like, they'll make their corrections, but they don't ever actually remedy the problem, then that could be considered abuse. They're just not taking care of the issue. Now, whether there's intention or not is kind of a fuzzy area. 9 times out of 10, when somebody's called up on abuse, it just means that they're not dealing with an issue that's been brought to their attention on numerous occasions.
And it can be, though, fraud by default if they do know about it.
Yes.
I sometimes say that abuse is the first cousin of fraud, Mm-hmm. So it all goes to the same place, damaging our national healthcare system. Next slide, please. And I might take a shot at this one on errors.
Oh, okay.
Okay, if I must. So errors, this is really shocking, but errors are about 90% of all the losses. Isn't that, that's really big. And how I explain this is, think about how huge the system is. I think the last time that it was counted was in 2013. I think there were 54 million Medicare beneficiaries in the United States. So there's probably 60 or so by now. I don't know. It's a lot. But imagine what it takes to manage such a big, gargantuan system like that. So it's very easy for these errors to occur. And I always feel sorry for the clerk that's in the bottom of a big stone building or concrete building, no windows, all day long in front of a computer screen, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, trying to, add in all these codes. And that's what happens. Let's just say that you go in and you have a little, minor skin lesion removed off your elbow. And then what happens is the clerk makes an error, somebody makes an error along the way, and Medicare gets billed for a surgery on the elbow. We can prevent that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you imagine that's only one case, and that is definitely an error. It's not the hospital's fault and the poor clerk. I for one, always think of people that work for our government as A, human beings, B, as my neighbors, people that I go to church with. Sometimes we're a little bit hard on those folks. They have hard jobs. So the errors happen. And when we catch them later on when we talk about Medicare summary notice, that is how we can help at COVE and SMP, and definitely how you all can help. You're going to be right there and maybe get a question, Yeah. Did you have a question?
Can I ask you?
Yeah, I think we're okay, sure.
When collecting data, how does it determine the difference between errors?
So the question was...
thank you. I was just going to say we can't hear the question. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, the question was when collecting data, how can we tell whether there's error or abuse? And how that would be is that, first of all, we would probably find it on what is called the Medicare summary notice. I'm sure all of you have health insurance, and typically we have what's called an EOB, or explanation of benefits. If you're a Medicare beneficiary, same thing. The document is called a Medicare summary notice. So to answer your question, if we find that, it's pretty easy to find the error if you really know what to look for on that document. And if we see that there's been a mistake, it just takes a couple of phone calls, maybe working with COVE, to find out if in fact it was an error or if it is abuse. Does that make sense?
And on a national scale, so we have to report any complaints that come into us, whether it's something found on the summary notice or there's a salesperson who's knocking someone's door down. And what happens with errors, so basically we call a provider and they fix the error for us, but that's reported to a national system. And if they find on a global level that there's been X amount of errors reported on this one provider, that alerts them to start paying attention and say, what's going on at this particular facility that there's so many errors? Is it a staff person that's not properly trained? Do they have inadequate software? Are they not understanding the coding? Because that happens a lot. The codes are very complicated. Is anything else involved with Medicare? So on a national level, there's an alert system, and they start paying attention, and they'll start stepping in. They'll go audit their accounts. They'll start asking for more information, and then they, on a larger level, will deem it abuse at a certain point. We don't actually decide that on our level.
Okay, the next slide, please.
And just to let you know, you have about 7 minutes left.
Oh my goodness, wow.
So much for chatting.
Okay. Well, let's pass this one up. We've already done it.
So consequences for Medicare fraud, error, and abuse. And I'll move quickly. Basically, for errors, the consequences really you just fix the error. It's not. We're not looking to incriminate anyone for making a mistake. For fraud and abuse, this can be something as simple as a fine or having them come in and pay attention to your accounts, all the way up to it's criminal and there's a prison sentence. So it's a wide spectrum all the way up to that prison level. And you've probably heard stories across the country where there was a big takedown of the scooter store and they have to pay all these fines back and restitution, but also an imprisonment.
All right, next. There's a lot more we could say about it, but we'll have to come another time. Next slide. Why am I so chatty?
I don't know. It's the coffee, I think.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so how do SMPs help Medicare beneficiaries avoid scams and detect errors? PDR, protect, detect, and report. So we're going to talk about that real briefly, but these folks are my grandparents. No, they're not really. Who are these folks?
That's Ken Wolvington and Audrey Arnold. They're two savvy seniors with Lyric Theater. They've been with us since 2007. Bless their souls. They are awesome people.
And they're doing a skit here. They are wonderful. Yes, if you can, work with us on having them come. You'll enjoy it. Next screen, please.
And yeah, we're going to zip right through this, Amy.
Yeah, you want to do this since you're much quicker than me.
I am quicker.
Bag of wind. Yes, that's why you're the boss.
So Medicare cards, you probably know you want to treat them like credit cards, and you want to make sure that residents are very aware to take care of their Medicare cards, even with the new number. Well, it's not their social security number. It's still an identifying number, and eventually there's going to be scams around these new numbers. So we still need to take care of that. We treat it like a credit card. We watch out for identity theft. You be aware that Medicare doesn't call or visit anyone. They do send out surveys, but I tell people not to answer phone calls, even if it's a survey. Right.
Okay, I'll take the next one. Next
Okay.
slide, please. This is a big deal, the Medicare summary notice. So what I'm going to say very briefly about it is I actually devised a presentation on how to get into that document, Medicare summary document, and get to the meat of it, where there's only 7 bullet points of what people can look at. They're not as confused. I didn't understand it. I was turning it upside down and sideways when I first looked at it. I feel it's a little complicated. So anyway, let us know and we'll come and give that presentation at your facility.
Probably one of the most important presentations.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We dress up for that one, don't we?
We do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So report suspect. Oh, we change the slide, Amy. Yeah, so you want to report suspected Medicare fraud and abuse. Most seniors are very uncomfortable doing this, but if somebody is making a complaint, you want to make sure to call us at 229-4731, and we'll be happy to help you with any errors or anything you've identified that's a problem. You want to say anything?
Just briefly, that if there is a problem, we will first come and talk to the people if they sign a release of information, and we can start the investigation. Usually that will resolve it because it's something simple. If not, we report it either to the State Attorney General of Vermont or the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, and then it really launches off. Next slide, please. You want to do that? We've already kind of done that.
Yep. So again, volunteers are very important. So if you know of anyone who might be interested in volunteering with us, we also have remote volunteers. So if somebody's somewhat skilled with office tools, I'd be happy to set them up remotely. We really utilize the volunteers.
Next slide, please. This is you too.
Oh no.
Yeah.
SMP volunteers. So Medicare beneficiaries.
No, we're on educational. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're messing with the system, right?
I
I know.
I'm getting
So
nervous.
again, this is just kind of a highlight of some of the things that they do. The volunteers are very, very critical to our program. We actually have to report their time provided to the program. Next slide, Amy. There you go.
The educational program's number one goal is again to protect, detect, and report Medicare error and fraud. And then we also do, which many of you have signed up for, the Vermont Signature Presentation Series, which is a lot of fun for us, and we love doing it. 3, the outreach to social service providers. We've been branching out. A colleague and I just gave a presentation to 100 students at UVM about 6 weeks ago. We want to, we're going to be doing that more and more. Hopefully you'll be seeing that.
More train-the-trainer type programs,
right.
Annual meeting type of programs where we can have a broader reach, and we're not just reaching out to seniors, but people that take care of them.
And finally, partnerships like we have with you, and hope to, to increase that. Yeah. You know what? Do you want me to do this so quick?
Yes, I want you to do it so quick. She's on it, that Amy.
Yeah. So these are just the 6 presentations that we have, and scammers beware. That's fraud in general. That's another part of our program, but it's really awesome. We suggest that you do these in the order. You can do them in any way you want. Next slide, please. Then the next one is another fraud presentation that I do and other outreach coordinators just on SMP or Medicare fraud. Next. I'm blasting through here. The Medicare summary notice. This one's really important. It's good stuff, and it's something that you should really hopefully can participate in with us.
And the Medicare summary notice is the #1 way to identify a problem. The #1 way for anyone.
It has the key. It's the key. Next, please. Vermont SMP Jeopardy, just like Alec Trebek. And you know what? I'm taller than him, and I'm not very tall. But it's a really fun program, and when I saw this, I thought, nobody's going to want to do that. It's boring as could be, but it's not. People really love it.
Seniors love Jeopardy.
They do, and they get a prize. I give a prize to everybody. I'm not supposed to.
So we can project that just like on TV, or we can do it on paper. We can keep it very simple, but it's a good game, and people are loving our games. Next
bingo, and it's bingo, except we educate and talk about Medicare during it, and people love it. I mean, who doesn't like bingo? Lastly is the Savvy Seniors, and I think you've already talked about that, a wonderful collaboration with the Lyric Theater Company. They are lots of fun. I mean, they're professional actors. If they're not available, occasionally we do it, and I always think that we're pretty good, but no one else does, or is it fair show? One of my colleagues thinks we're lousy at it, but I think she's just very.
And we want to build teams of Savvy Seniors around the state, so they don't need to be amateur actors. They can be people who just like to act. So if you know of a group of people that might be interested in doing something like this, it's not a heavy burden and not a high time commitment, but it's certainly worth a while. It's a lot of camaraderie, and you have the value of going into these places and making people laugh, bringing a little joy into their day while educating them.
So next is our last slide, and can you take that into the partnership?
Yes, we zip through.
It's the hardest one. This is the hardest one, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
How can SMP and SASH work together? So clearly, hosting our educational programs within your sites. We would like to do tabling events. One of our objectives this year was to get involved with more and more tabling events. We're trying to do at least 2 a month. We want to also install interactive bulletin boards. These are bulletin boards that may have a game. It has fraud facts, our newsletter, some pockets filled with materials that the seniors can answer questions, return the information, and then get prizes for. And we change them out once a month. So it's a small 24 by 36 bulletin board that we will work it for you. And it also enables us to walk into your state.
Please. There we go.
It also enables us to come to your site and become more familiar with you and your residents, which we're finding is a very nice way to handle this program going through Vermont. And to practice program resources, having complaints generated through you as you hear them from your residents is a key part of what we do, is gathering complaints, reporting them to Medicare, getting solutions for people. We have kind of what I call a one-stop shopping. We can contact Medicare investigators directly and completely link somebody directly in without having to go through the funnel of the Medicare system like most people do. So it's the beauty of being part of this natural program. Anything else?
No, I think that's absolutely the end. I'm sad. I'm so sad about that.
You did a good job.
It's been the best audience I've had in a long time.
And now Michael's going to demonstrate burpees.
Burpees. Well, I think not.
Okay.
Anyways, Amy.
Yes,
thank
you so much. Yeah, thank you for being here. And there has not been any questions posted in our chat. So if anyone has any, you can ask them now. But I think just in the interest of time, that what I will do is then forward those questions maybe to you, Mike, to you and Anita to answer. And then maybe we can also post them where we post this recorded webinar on STAR so that people can access them later. So we make sure everyone has access to those questions if that works. So does that work for you guys?
Yes, that works fine. And thank you again so much. And we're hoping that we're hoping to have a deeper collaboration with you. And by the way, if Cindy LaFrance, if you're out there listening to this, I'm going to call you this afternoon.
And it sounds like Melissa has a question. Melissa, you want to ask your question?
I think we could maybe clarify a little bit on the tabling events, because I think one of the things you were talking about is like what you were doing in Bennington when they had their health fair. You were invited to table there. But then also, I think we were just talking about setting a table up at a site, right?
Right.
So like here at Grandway, for example, if they had a time that was free, they knew people were going to be around maybe after another event, they could let you know and you could come set up right there and just be available for questions that people might have, right? So it doesn't have to be, oh, we're holding this big event, let's let you come table. But also it could just be, hey, here's a time that people might be around and available for questions.
So Melissa was asking me to clarify a little bit about tabling events. And while it's true, we can go to health fairs that you're holding or any other kind of an event that you're holding where there may be people coming in to table, we're also looking to set up a table at your site maybe once a month, once every 3 months, just to be a presence in the room so we can answer questions and direct people to resources, and to get acquainted with the residents and seniors in our state, which is really what we want, is that connection.
I think coffee hours
Coffee hours, good.
Those happen all over.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Good
So-
idea.
And please contact us if you want to work with us.